I'm really pleased to say that we're doing another one of our head-to-head talks today, and Claudia Natanson's joining us from the US. And Claudia, I think we've known each other for about 20 years now, which sounded quite incredible to me. Obviously, you don't look that age, I do.
No.
And we first met at BT, where you were the head of BT's CERT, and then you went on to found and lead the Secure Business Services division of BT. You then moved to Diageo, a company that some of us have become very familiar with during during lockdown for some reason, where you were their global CISO. Then you spent a short time in the defense sector, and then you moved to government service, and you were the Chief Security Officer of DWP, the UK's largest government department, for some 4 years. And then you've been in the US since on a variety of projects for different organizations. So quite a stellar career. And I haven't even mentioned all of the academic stuff and the fact that you've featured in the FT as an industry leader. But how did you get into information security to start with? What was your journey into that?
It's a weird journey because before I went into information security at all, I had spent a number of years as a nuclear scientist at the United Nations Atomic Spectroscopic Laboratory.
Right.
And it was while I was there, I guess it was the thought leadership part of me kicking in, and I was saying, I can see that this is going to be huge because we use a lot of technical stuff, as you can imagine, in an atomic lab. And I left there and decided to do my master's at the University of Birmingham, and then went on to do my PhD. It was while I was there, having done my PhD in all of this with computer science in that kind of field, I said, okay, the industry seems very large, very wide. And I started to do a lot of the industry technical hands-on courses to make sure that I understood. And it was while I was there that I got the nod from BT to join them. And at that point, that's where everything started in my career, because going into BT almost as an ethical hacker, trying to understand how we could not just load balancing, but understanding vulnerabilities, started my whole interest in security. And the support I got from BT and the huge learning I got from so many of the folks. There are so many people from the research labs to everywhere. I mean, they're an old institution, and there's a lot of knowledge there, and that helped to propel me. And I think the CEO and the executive team supported my quest and inquiry. I have a very inquiring mind. And while it was quite comical to them, they also supported me on that journey. It was them who actually gave me the money to set up Secure Business Services. So,
All right.
yeah. So I think that's where the whole journey started. And then we met in BT Cert, and then the rest is history, really.
And so I suppose it's hard to compress all of that career into sound bites. But one of the things I've heard you talk about an awful lot is that understanding of not just technology, but also the human mind and how they interact. So you've taken what I assume is a really good, solid science background, but you've also added that knowledge of human behavior, if you like. And how important is that?
Jonathan, it's so huge that sometimes it really makes me sad that we don't understand that the cheat sheet for security is the human side. And I think in most of the commissions or the roles that I have had, they are always very complex. I've covered over 100 countries. My remits are usually very global. Always, as I say, if they're not almost 100, over 100 countries. And so trying to roll and implement security across different cultures, these different time zones, the way that people approach security means that you have to understand that human element to be able, because your first line of defense to security will be us. It will be how we think. What is it that we need to do? We have to buy into it, to be able to say, yes, I know what I'm supposed to do to help make this organization secure. And this is what I have to do. I think that if you look sometimes on the budgets that they have for awareness and training, it pales in comparison to the kind of focus that we have on technology. What I want to say is that if you look on breaches, even look on ICO's report of the breaches, even where they are found, the human error is the cause of the breach, never technology. And in fact, technology gets a bad name because one of the things that we have to realize going forward is that we always say this in security, that we are forever trying to protect a moving target because technology changes every single day. And so the thing is that we look on today's world where today people are doing more online in terms of email. They're using cloud applications. They're using mobile devices to be able, so the whole digitization of the whole world is there. But unless we can get our arms around how we protect and be able to give assurance for use of these things, and we haven't even started on the Internet of Things where we're connecting even more to be able to use that kind of data. Unless we get the security part correct, then it means that we won't be able to enjoy a lot of the experiences that are coming from use of digitization. It's the same thing, like not far from what we had at Diageo. We need to make sure that people drink responsibly. We need to make sure that, everything is in the right place for people to enjoy a product.
Yeah.
So underline seamlessly into it. So I think the people element, I think they really need to go back to breaches. They're the key components or the key areas that we look at when we look at security and look at the vulnerabilities that are exploited. Jonathan, the first thing is weak passwords. I mean, it's as simple as that. We still have people who will have the same password for both work and at home, for every login, for every application that they have. So that is not technology. If you look again, it's backdoors in application vulnerabilities. We live at the application layer. Apps is the big thing. So again, the vulnerabilities that are in there are the things that are often looked at to be compromised. Again, if we do security right, we should be giving assurance as we design and build. So that gives you the confidence that you can use and enjoy the experience. I think other things that you have to look on is things like patching because of the vulnerabilities. We have a lot of security debt carrying at the moment, because a lot of times we do only what is needed to tick the compliance sheet. But unless you do end-to-end security, unless you have a proper risk management program that allows you to say, okay, I can't manage all of the risks, but at least I can prioritize and understand which ones need to be done. So again, if you look on that, these are all things that are down to human error. Misconfiguration of systems, misconfiguration of applications in the way that we want to make them to operate. All of these things are human errors. So at the end of the day, I think the human element is huge. It is my cheat sheet for making sure.
That's fascinating. I mean, one of the things that we're seeing across our desk is where obviously we're dealing with more security breaches than in normal because of the pandemic. And we're certainly seeing a lot of ransomware type attacks during the pandemic. We are seeing issues, as you said, about patches not being applied because many networks are configured to apply patches when the laptop hits the home network in the office, and because the individual hasn't been in the office for 5 months, they've missed 5 months of patches. But one of the biggest trends we're seeing, I think, is what I've called the lack of Sandra. And what I mean by that is I think often when we're in the office and we see an email that looks a bit odd, or we see something that doesn't look quite right, we turn to the clever person next to us or in the desk opposite. Let's call her Sandra. And we
Yes.
say, Sandra, that looks a bit odd. Can you have a look at this for me? And Sandra says, oh, don't click on that, delete it immediately, or or ring IT, or sandbox it, or does whatever the process is. And quite often we don't rely on IT, we don't rely on the CISO, we rely on somebody clever sitting next to us. And we've missed our clever Sandra with working from home. And as a result, people are clicking on more stuff.
Yeah.
And my perception is that a lot of these gangs and ransomware and phishing are industrialized these days, aren't they? There's some very, very big, clever, well-resourced gangs are exploiting this lack of Sandra to exploit humans to get into the network. Is that just my perception, or are you seeing things like that in the pandemic as well?
So you've touched on a couple of things that are so true, but are huge for us. There are two things. For years, I think people need to ask themselves the question, if it was all about technology, if it was all about, never about the human element, phishing has been with us for years. It's alive and well, as you said. It's not increasing. And phishing is maybe the first stage into actually moving to success in the ransomware attacks. Now, let's go back to some of that. Historically, when phishing was just out there, people used to cast a very wide net through, and we'd see how many fish they could reel in.
Yeah.
Today, it's much more sophisticated, as is ransomware. It used to be a wide attack. The attack surface for both phishing and for ransomware are now very, very targeted. And one of the things, of course, is, I say, the monetary gain, the financial gain to be done. So why waste time going for fish where you probably aren't going to get the real juicy data that you could actually sell, and you go straight for that area and those folks who you know could really want to decide whether to pay for the data or not. Now, there are a number of things here, and let me go back again. One of the areas we spoke about is the Sandras are not having someone near. I want to say to practitioners today in the pandemic climate that we know that when we are trying to implement good security, the first thing that I would do if I was going on a new role or into a new organization is I couldn't go like a bull in a china shop. I'd have to actually understand what's the culture. What do people here? You're telling me your culture already is your Sandra and whatever else makes up your company culture. What I am not hearing, and I'm sure that there are folks doing that out there, but for those who probably are still wondering what's to be done, you have got to do a timeout. You can't secure a culture that has gone. That culture is no longer there. Everyone is at home. You need to build a new company culture.
Yeah.
And that company culture is a hybrid. It's changing every day, because I would say that the new culture that is being formed, people have been in lockdown and been working remotely for some months now. We're seeing the statistics that are coming out that are saying that 80% of organizations are warming up to the conversations that say, I think remote is going to be a part of a permanent solution for us going forward. If you read the reports, at least 40% of these organizations are saying, and I am ready to give the nod if you want it for you to do full remote working.
Yeah.
Or you can choose to do 3 days, or you can have flexi hours. So it's a hybrid. So here's the problem for us, or rather, I should not say problem, challenge for us folks, is to say, you have now got to create a security plan that has a new remote culture.
Yes.
And a hybrid one at that, because you're going to have folks that are going to be saying, oh, well, I'm going to go in 2 days a week, then I'm going to work 3 days and I have flexi hours. So here comes a whole different culture. I totally believe that the top of organizations have got to announce what is their culture, because it's a new culture.
Yeah.
Gone are the days, there are no coffee machine discussions. There's no going to the cafeteria. There's no all of these things, no smoking outside, exchanging stuff. But we have got to decide what our culture is. Another thing that is a challenge for us is this, Jonathan. We know that when people tend to feel stressed, they will click on things because the attention span is diverted. And if you look at today's ways of working, since we have had lockdown, we say that we are happy that we are not commuting. And of course we are. Who wouldn't be? But what we have done is that we have taken the commuting time and added more online calls and whatever it is into those times. So the mind is not getting a focused time out throughout the days. I'm having people telling me that not only are they having lunch at the desk because they're having calls, but they're having dinner at their desk because dinner is so reachable.
Yeah.
So my fear from a security person is I have you for almost 11 hours concentrating on that. And you know that when folks are on calls, they are concentrating on the calls, they're exchanging instant messages, they're looking on emails. You're starting to get me really worried that you will click.
Yes, yeah.
And that to me is, I'm saying, part of the challenges that I see facing me in this pandemic climate, which is understanding what the well-being nature long-term of the human element is going to look like, what the current state of the well-being user is. And therefore, I'm telling you that the hackers are looking on this and understanding very, very well how to play into this.
Yeah, no, fascinating stuff. I guess a sort of related topic is and I'm overgeneralizing, but a lot of the information security community comes from a technical background, not a human behavior background necessarily, and is often white and often male. And I've two daughters that are both interested in cybersecurity. Is the cybersecurity profession changing, and does that help reduce risk if there are people from different backgrounds involved as well?
So a couple of answers to that question. Cybersecurity, of course, will change because, as I started out and saying, is that I remember when I was studying, the professor came in one day. He was very flustered and saying, I've just finished writing today's lecture and I wish I was teaching history because that never changes. History is history. But every day technology changes and I've got to change my lecture.
Yeah.
So cyber security, let me retract a little bit because it's something that's really important to me. I know that cybersecurity is a buzzword, right? Because it's there with us. I mean, if we think about it, we have over 4,000 ransomware attacks today. I mean, it's just as simple as that. It's as crazy as that. We have over 60, really vulnerability alerts coming out each day. And you just have to add on all of the different technologies that are out there that we have to cope with. You remember when I started the conversation, Jonathan, I'd said that I think we need to look on security end to end. And this is where I'm coming with cyber. If you're going to do security from a professional point of view, you have to look across what I call the 5 pillars.
Yeah.
The first pillar for me has to be the information and the data and everything that we create. But then it has to run on the technology, the networks, the systems. We have to interact with it. And that's the IT stack that comes after the information. The third stack is the cyber stack. That's where we're doing a lot of stuff online. And when we want to share stuff, all of that goes into cyber. Then we have the physical side of it, because those are the buildings and how we do it. Remote now, we're at home, we need to take that into control. And then you have personal, which is us. Cybersecurity is one of those pillars. But for you to have solid security, all 5 have to be working correctly. Today, what we're doing is that we're focusing on cybersecurity, and every one of those pillars have very wide areas that you can concentrate on. So if you're in cybersecurity, you may want to do design and build, do applications, understand how you will make applications, code, all of those things will live in there the way that you want to look at that. You want to do data analytics. You want to understand how we'll orchestrate data to be able to make fast and quick decisions, how we'll use machine learning and AI into that. So there's a huge areas. Your daughters could just knock themselves out in terms of what areas that they want to do cyber. In the same way that you would want to look on the personal and physical side, there's a whole element to how we protect buildings. And especially if you want to look at how we may be under attack in nation states and everything. So you could also knock yourself out there, and IT is IT. The reason why we have this perception of security and technology is because a lot of times they put security sitting in the technology stack and reporting into technology. The more that you do that is the more that you lose the real essence of security as the assurer. An assurer means that you are thinking about the people element. Why do you think GDPR, you're the GDPR man, why do you think GDPR has removed the DPO and said, no, you must stand alone, hold people to account? And that's what security needs to be able to do. Because security is a business function. The impact from it shatters, absolutely shatters. If you look on ransomware and the amount of times that people will pay more and more as cryptocurrency value increases, so will the ransomware requests for the ransomware increase. Because one of the things that's interesting, if I divert for just a half a second, if you have your data encrypted under a ransomware attack and you decide that you want to pay the ransom, right? Then in the mind of the attacker, you are a good one to watch.
Yeah.
Because you are a payer, or whichever word, that's not necessarily the word that they may say.
Yeah.
But it therefore means that you have got to make sure that you maintain such a strong security posture going forward, because I'm having my eye on you in terms of I may be able to get some more money from yourself.
Yeah.
So I think when you look on all these things, the impact on the revenue that is being used to pay for ransomware, you would wonder why you would think that security is a technological discussion or to do. It's a business impacting thing and has to be used. And if you can use it in that effect, it's perfect. Because in the organizations where I've worked, where they're considered to be an integral part of how the business operations operate and how the revenue is protected, beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
No, I think very wise thoughts, I think. And from our experience, we're seeing exactly the same with Office 365 as well. If you pay ransomware, you get on a suckers list. If you are vulnerable to an Office 365 account, at least from what we're seeing across our desk, it looks like, you'll be hit again and again and again until you invest in those defenses and until you upskill your people to stop that happening.
Well, the people especially, because I have never, there's no way that you can convince me that a hacker says that, okay, I'm going to give you back your data.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And wash my hands and forget about it.
I don't have your data.
And we're going to see this. I think there's some litigation in the US over the Blackboard attacks. I'm not sure whether you've seen those. Yep. And just as we're recording this yesterday, there was some litigation issued saying that Blackboard paid too readily. Obviously, insurers, from what I'm hearing, have got a role to play here as well, because some insurers are paying ransoms to cap their liability. So whole host of challenges.
Yeah.
I guess we're slightly tight on time now. This has been fascinating, and I
Yeah.
think we could go on for at least another hour.
Mhm.
But is there a future for cybersecurity? What is the future? What are the type of things that we should look out for? What are the new risks around the corner?
I think the future for cybersecurity, there are many different areas that cybersecurity will look at. It's interesting that the pandemic has hit out some of the things that we used to start to wrap our hands and arms around. And that was, for example, when you look at cybersecurity, the whole thing about it is proactivity and being able to react quickly, but react ahead of time so that you're proactive. And so I think in the whole cyber area, one of the things that we were doing is being able to orchestrate so many of the new tools and technological advances out there to our advantage, to be able to not only monitor, but to gather data from so many different areas across this landscape that we have, that we are monitoring like meerkats, and to be able to bring it to one central platform for us to be able to make quick decisions, because quick decision making and accurate decision making means a whole difference in the cyber world. We're talking a lot about AI and artificial intelligence, but artificial intelligence, the whole premise and it's based on being able to create and understand what that normal baseline is. It quickly creates a normal baseline by which you can then judge abnormalities.
Mm-hmm.
But in this particular COVID time, there is no normal baseline. And
Yeah.
so that again is why I'm saying to you, parts of the whole cyber world is having to realign to not only the way that people are working, but how do we create that normal baseline to understand what abnormalities mean. We moved people out into remote working. We had no time to look on the physical side. When you look at one of the biggest areas that we have that are compromised are privileged access. Because one of the things that once a hacker reaches onto your network, for them to be able to gain access and then increase their privileged access so that they can do the things that they need to do. I spoke about security debt initially.
Yes.
And what I had said is that that is some of the security debt that we are carrying that we need to address. When we went into COVID, we had the security debt of asset management. We do not know where our assets are. Today, worse, we don't know who is using our assets, who has access to our assets, who are sharing our assets. So that's one of the things that are going to be there. From a cyber perspective, you have to look on the vulnerabilities. Who is managing those vulnerabilities? We suffer a lot across security on privileged user access. Jonathan, it's really one of my things that really annoys me. People will have a lot of privileged access. They will change roles and they move to the next role with the same privileged access.
Yeah.
And so by the time they change roles 3 times, they are carrying a whole host of privileges to access the things that they don't need to. Now, I'm not saying that these people are using them, but if an attacker comes in, that attacker immediately has access to all those things.
Yes.
So again, all I'm saying is that a lot of the things that we should have been addressing as security debt, we need to go back. We need to revisit them, and we need to make sure that we are looking at prioritizing how to do that. We now know that the culture has changed. We now need to adapt the way that we implement, the way that we educate, awareness and training to a whole army of folks that are now no longer face-to-face. There is no Sandras. So now we need to understand how we are going to support these folks. We need to then, you remember, Jonathan, some time ago I spoke about, I see in the future a chief well-being officer or wellness officer or something.
Yeah.
We need to look at that because I think visual fatigue is going to set in, and also we may see medical problems because people starting to have shoulder, neck injuries, all sorts of things, long-term working in a particular way. So I know it may not sound like cyber, but because it has a human element and because I know what that will do in terms of people not feeling well, or as I said to you, distracted. And because ransomware and phishing will be one of those two big things that will be out there, and that will be dependent on the success of our tired workforce clicking, that is why I think it warrants us to be able to concentrate on it. And in this period, I also hope that the organization will really begin to look at security from a business perspective and remove the whole technological band so that they can absolutely support the business in a way that we can.
That's absolutely fascinating, and since we have to end, a great point to end on. So thanks so much for your time, and thanks so much for sharing your wisdom. And I look forward to catching up with you again. And thanks everybody in your homes for watching.